about Carver Center today from a perspective of the memories that we have about Carver Center. And we want to, some of you are here on the panel on today because you have some early memories. Some of you were brought up in Carver Center, doing the things that Carver Center did back in the day in terms of recreational activities, in terms of just, being helped in school and those types of things. So we're going to talk about that. And we just want to talk about, and the reason for doing this is that we want to capture African American history, those narratives, those memories that we have, and we want to preserve them for the future. And so in part what we're doing today is to try to capture that, and certainly we want to capture the memories that we have from Carver Community Center. All right? So anyway, so thank you all very much. We want to say thank you to our program participants that are here, that are a part of this also program on this morning. So as we get going here, most of you, I'm going to introduce myself, most of you know me as Stephanie Jackson. I'm the daughter of Thelma and W.C. Jackson, and I'm glad to be the moderator on this afternoon about Carver Center. My mother worked for Carver Center for 21 years, and as one of our participants would say, always used to hear him come in and say, "How you doing, Miss J?" Yeah. As Rodney would do that. So we're going to talk about some of those memories also. So let's talk about early years. Talk about early years of Carver Center. What are your earliest recollections of Carver Center in terms of its very beginnings? And some of you have some recollections of the beginnings of Carver Center. Let's talk about that. What are some of your memories?
One of mine, I started working for the Carver Center in 1957 when I was 13. I was in charge of the babysitting, especially when school was out. They would bring their kids to the Carver Center, so I babysitted, and I babysitted on Saturday, made meals, just did that type of thing. I was on the student council that we had, secretary one year, and then we had several secretaries. I can't remember who the president was at that time, but we had functions there. It was the only place that we could go on the weekend or during the week, that was a lot of fun. We had little dances, we had different activities for the kids. We even had a basketball team that played different ways. My sister and I, we were one of the cheerleaders on the basketball team. On Jeannie. Yeah. But it was a place for us to go. And we had guidance from Miss Jackson, Joan Hall, Miss Willabelle Williams. So it was just a place to go, to get out the house. So, because sometimes, we at home, all we had to do was homework and work. So that was a place for entertainment. But we had a lot of guidance from people that worked at Carver Center.
So as we talk about those early good memories, I even want to roll it just a little bit further back. So Miss Duffy, I know that you have some memories, and even before Mary and Jeannie Shelton, and who else was the good? Was it Mary? You were, or Linda? Linda was cheerleaders down at the Carver Center. Because that was recreational activities for everyone. But even prior to them being able to do that, what are your earliest recollections of Carver Center?
Well, I just remember I lived in Monmouth and we came over here. They had dances and they had big dinners. They put up long tables, and I don't know what the occasion was that they were serving us a meal. But the soldiers from Camp Ellis would come up here, and we went there. Then as had my children, I used to get a carload of the neighbors and my sons and take them down to Carver Center. But I wasn't there every day, just when they had some function.
But you do remember when, you would take them down when the soldiers would come up from Camp Ellis, and they would have parties?
There would be a dance, and then they would have a dinner.
Okay.
So that's all the memories. I didn't attend the Carver Center a lot. I took my children, but they were down there playing basketball or whatever games they had.
So as we talk about Carver Center and knowing that Carver Center was initially established because it was a place for the servicemen to come You know, Camp Ellis wasn't too far from Galesburg, and because of the railroad, the way that it intersected here, you know, a lot of those soldiers, you know, they transferred from here, you know, they crossed through here because of, you know, the railroad going down to Camp Ellis. So it was a place for soldiers to come and to spend recreational time. So let's talk a little bit. Why do you think that they built that Carver Center where it's at, location-wise? Does anybody have any kind of recollections from what you heard from your families?
Probably close with the railroad and the railroad depot.
It was on the south end of town, and that's where all the African Americans lived. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it was, you know, it was on the south end of town, and that's where all the African Americans lived. It was easy to get to, you didn't have to have transportation, and, I mean, let's just face it, that's where we were a group as.
Okay, okay. All right. And even though on the south end of town, and how many of you all lived on the south end of town? Most everybody here lived on the south end of town.
It was a meeting place for the east and the west, was what we used to call it, the east and the west. Because I grew up at Carver Center in the 60s. This is, and back then that was it. I mean, it was the place to go. I mean, that was the meeting place, was the Carver Center. I was just telling Rodney Wilson that when I got grounded, you might as well cut my legs off. Because if I couldn't go to the Carver Center, the world had come to an end. And this is where I learned sports. I mean, we was all, Cook School was our Superdome. I mean, and I remember playing ball in my dad's backyard with your brother, you know, Kevin and all of us, the Duffys, you know, and we grew up with Bird and Gopher and everything. And once we got a little too big, we started breaking windows. We had to go to Cook School. But it was always Carver Center. Mr. T. Haynes. I couldn't stand that guy, man, because he was rough, man, because he was rough with us. We used to run from the security guard at Knox College because you wasn't supposed to come through there. Yeah. And we would come to there and take off, man. You know, and it's just, when you brought it to me about the Carver Center, I couldn't believe it. When I heard that it caught a fire, and then somebody said, well, they tore it down. And I rolled by there and I just stopped. I totally stopped and just turned the truck off. And the memories from that place, I mean, I could sit and talk for days and could never reenact everything that we did at Carver Center.
Could you talk about a little bit then about what were the activities you did at Carver Center?
Everything.
So talk about what's everything.
It was just anything. They had, man, anything you wanted to do. You could play the piano. None of us know Liberace, but we get on the piano and play and sing. I mean, it was always something to do.
Learn how to play cards.
It was always something to do. And, you know, I never knew of, now we had our fights and stuff, because kids have that.
Yeah.
But that evening you was playing again. You know, it was just everything to do. The basketball is what brings back. But it goes back even further. When I was a kid, real young, going to Cook School, I used to remember my dad played for him and Pete Theory, and all of them played on the baseball team.
Yes, Carver.
Yeah.
And I used to go out to Lake Story and watch them play. And Sonny Wilder and all of them, they played for the Carver Center. So this is back in my dad's day, you know. Yes, these days.
Yeah, we used to put on plays and musicals and things on the stage. You know, that was another activity. It was, like you said, it was the place to go.
So how did you feel in terms of how did that develop you as a young man or a young woman that was growing up and being able to go down to the Carver Center? What did you feel, or what did you think how did that feed into you in terms of who you are today?
It made us grow up.
Yeah.
That somebody cared about us. You know, we were back in the age in '68 when they was fighting and rioting and all of that, and we didn't have nothing but Carver Center. We couldn't go no other place but Carver Center. And like I said, we was at Carver Center more than we was at home. But at 10 o'clock, when Carver Center closed at 10 o'clock, it was ready to go to bed.
Yeah.
When you got up in the morning, you took a shower, bath, we didn't have no shower back then, bath, and really, and went to school, and as soon as school's over with, you down to Carver Center.
Well, one thing I remember, we had the same disciplinary structure at the Carver Center as we did
Yes.
at home. There wasn't any difference. So if you acted up and you did what you wasn't supposed to do, you got dealt with.
That's right.
Miss Williams, your mother, I didn't work down there too much when Joan Hall was down there, but you didn't get a break. You didn't get a break down there, because you had to act the same way that you did at home. And most times, they would call.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Mary did so-and-so and so-and-so, and I did it when I got home. So you didn't, you had the same structure. It was a, what's that old saying? It takes a village to raise.
Yeah.
Well, that was the village.
So let's talk about the leadership then, down at the Carver Center. What are your memories about some of the strong leadership of the men and women who were directors at the Carver Center? And who were some of those people?
Well, like I said, Mr. T. Haynes, I can remember him, then, Theory,
Yeah, Olive Theory.
and his wife.
Yeah, Mary Theory.
Mary Theory. Cause just like she said, it was like home. You didn't go outside your boundary at the center, just like you wouldn't go outside your boundary at home. You couldn't just come down to the center and act crazy.
No.
You just couldn't because you had to go home sooner or later. So we was good, we was bad kids. I mean, all kids are bad, but we were disciplined and respectful enough, that's the word, at the Carver Center. I mean, we respected all the teachers and elders that were down there.
And Miss Willowbell.
Oh.
Sure.
Yeah.
We were dancing. Oh, yeah, 3 inches apart. There was space in between. There's one thing too, we carried on from generation to generation to help out too with the children. And believe it or not, our Knox students carried on with us too. They came from Knox and they helped the youth with their studies. They still do. They still do.
So I want to get back to the recreational piece, because that's really so very important in terms of the title, in terms of black thespians that I think Bonnie Harris used to do years ago, and after they would have that on Saturdays, they'd have something to eat. One of the bigger things was basketball. And so, Robbie, I'm going to ask you, could you talk a little bit about the basketball? And even as the basketball is starting off as maybe a group of young people playing down in the gym, the small gym to the larger gym as it got built, but then it started enlarging into those traveling teams that used to come in. And could you also talk about how it brought in a very diverse group of people that were coming down to the center?
I don't know if people even realize about the little gym that we had when we were growing up.
That
was the gym. I mean, we was in there 7 days a week because Miss Theory and all of them and Roxy and all of them would open up the gym on a Sunday afternoon and a Sunday, because Carver Center was closed on Sunday. They would open the gym up on a Sunday for us to play, because then they go, I don't want to see no stuff down here. You guys make sure it's locked up, and they would give us the key, and we would just play basketball. I got 6 brothers and sisters. I'm the only brother with 5 sisters, and I'm next to the youngest. And I've been down at Carver Center since I was like 5 years old, because my sisters had to take me down there. So I was down there, when we were real little, still had a little Coke machine, when we first walked in the door, that little Coke machine, we get the little Cokes and stuff.
Come up the steps.
Come up the steps, little Coke machine and stuff, and, I mean, it really brings back memories, and I don't know really seriously what I would have been if it wasn't for Carver Center, because I had a lot of leadership. But I learned the respect of elders from Carver Center. And the respect was the most important thing of us growing up. Roxy Schumann, Roxy Wilder, she was our, many times, I tell you what, seriously, she brought us up real good. I remember I was cussing all the time, and she said, Rod, you cuss one more time, you're gonna get kicked out of Carver Center. I ain't never got kicked out of Carver Center. She said, you cuss one more time, you're gonna get kicked out of Carver Center. All right, Miss Wilder, I ain't gonna cuss. Well, I didn't even last 3 minutes. She kicked me out of Carver Center? She did. She kicked me out that first time. I used to work down there. I used to work down at Carver Center, yeah. But when we talk about Carver Center, it brings back to me that that's all we had. You know, it was back there in the 68 when Martin Luther King got killed and stuff, and that's when racial shit was really bad around here. People don't realize that. It was really bad around here. And the only place we had to go was Carver Center. We didn't go to YMCA. We didn't go no other place. We only went to Carver Center.
That was our why.
That was our
I
why.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
like basketball, all the black athletes,
Always.
like from Dale Kelly,
Yep,
my cousin, the Lucketts,
yep,
the Finleys,
yeah.
the Triplets,
Triplets, yeah.
all the athletes that played for the Galesburg Silver Streaks came
Played
through Carver Center. That's where it all
That's
started.
right. Every one of them.
Was Carver Center.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the stepping stone.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember Coach Field, when I went to Galesburg before I went to Costa, I didn't make the team because it was then, I believe, this is my own thing now, I don't want to go funny, this, and it was all political in there. But anyway, from Bumpy Nicks on down. But Coach Field told me, he said, well, Freddie, you're not as good as your cousins, meaning Odie and Bernie. So you can play for the Carver Center. That's just what he said. In other words, they even knew that we had the Carver Center. You know, and that's just what Coach Field told me.
Then you have to remember, John Field had his guys play down to the Carver Center to get them up.
Yeah, this is
They had to play down to the Carver Center to play for the Silver Streak.
and it wasn't, to me, it wasn't white, black, it was just playing, man. It was just playing ball. I never did really look at it that way. I went to the Y. I had a membership at the Y. I had when it was downtown there, off of, what's that, Fair Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was down, I had one, but that wasn't, and we played ball there, but it just wasn't, it wasn't the same. The only difference from the Y to the Carver Center was they had a swimming pool.
Yeah, that is it.
And that's it. And I could swim, and if you couldn't swim, you wasn't worried about it nowhere. But it was just, the basketball is what brings back to me, basketball, baseball.
Well, it was learning how to play pool, learning how to play cards, it was different things that
But
you learn how to do.
even people now are saying, well, the Carver Center's gone, but the gym is still there. That's not the gym.
No.
The gym was in the Carver Center with the stage, just like, with the stage. That was the gym. We got big, we could lean up against one wall and shoot the whole length of the court. You know, that was the gym, man.
Do you ever feel like Carver Center was kind of isolated? It was kind of a place of segregation where just only black folks showed up?
I didn't look at it that way.
No,
That's
we didn't
what I'm
look at it
saying.
like that.
I didn't look at it
It's
that
the
way.
only place we had to go.
Yeah, it wasn't a place of segregation to
No.
me, it was just the place
The
to go.
place to go.
I mean, to
do
me,
something.
I remember a couple of times white guys would come down there and play, we didn't beat them up or
No.
nothing. I mean, it
No.
was competition,
Hey,
you know.
all the
Yeah.
Silver Street
And
guys
that's
went
just
down
the
there.
way, yeah.
Everybody played for the
Charlie
Silver
Dole,
Street.
he
Went
used
to
to come
play
down
at
there,
Carver Center.
Zach Thiel played
Oh,
Carver
yeah.
Center.
Yeah.
All of them did.
All of them did. John Krasinski, all
Yeah,
of
all of
them.
them.
What them names are coming back, man.
So-
Memories
so-
coming back.
But what I hear you saying though, what I hear you saying is that because of the leadership, going back to that leadership piece,
Yes.
because of the leadership, and there was a high expectation on conduct
Yes.
of the young people that were down at the Carver
You
Center.
knew what you could and couldn't do.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
I never got kicked out again, so I learned a lesson, didn't I? I never got kicked out of Carver Center again.
What were some other things in terms of just good life skills that you learned from being down at the Carver Center?
One thing, they encouraged us to go to church. They encouraged us to go to church. We were down there on Saturday, and they would say, well, see you in church Sunday, see you in church on Sunday, and if they didn't see you in church, they're gonna come to you. They're gonna come to you and ask you, how come you
I
not
didn't
there?
have a choice about
You
that.
know, because me either.
Yeah, I didn't have a
You know,
choice.
so that went together, Carver City and the churches, you know, different churches in Galesburg. So that gave you an extra instruction.
Right, so that connected into the spirituality of your life.
Exactly.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's neither good nor bad, but again, like most of the panel saying up there, back in the day, you had to do what was right, or you got put out of Carver Center, or your parents would say something to you. Because we got back to the house, we got about it. And it was black or white when they came down there. I'm older than these guys, and the guys came down to the center to play ball. There was no problem, just come down there and play. We're talking back in the 50s, early 60s, and it just never was a problem down there. I don't think that we didn't go, I was go as a kid when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, but later on, everybody went to the Carver Center. That was the place to go. So it's a sad situation that we don't have that anymore.
And Mr. Bunch, since you said that, you were down there during the 50s, who was the director? Who was some of the leadership that was down there during that time frame?
Mr. Jackson at the very when I was down there. Then after that, Mr. Tarver. Mr. Tarver was the man. And then Miss Willowbell. I left town in 1958. And so after that, I really don't know who took over after. Well, no, Joan Hall was there. I remember. That's after I came back to Galesburg in the 60s and 70s. I'm sorry, in the 70s. But a lot of people don't know about Mr. Carver.
Mr. Tarver, his wife was a teacher out at the high school?
First black teacher in Galesburg, Marie Tarver,
Yes.
Galesburg High School.
Yes. And her husband was the director at the Carver Center.
Mary and Pat and several of us are of the Willowbell Williams era. And what a lady she was. She influenced all of us in so many ways. And I remember that I wanted to join the Girl Scouts. And at that time, people of color were not allowed to join the Girl Scouts. Well, if you knew Miss Willowbell, and like you were saying, to me, she will always be Miss Willowbell. There's no calling her by her first name or others. She started a Girl Scout troop for us. She always taught us that there were different ways to approach a problem. And you didn't always have to approach it head on. And certainly not with violence, and certainly not with foul language or inappropriate words or anything like that. But I remember sitting in her backyard, and all of us little at that time, they called us colored girls, all us little colored girls, sitting back there, and we had a bonfire and learning to make s'mores, and talking about the fact that we had a Girl Scout troop too. I remember going into the center, and at that time, there were very few of us. Maybe my cousin Tony was one of the few people who was able to be in the drama clubs and on stage. But under Miss Willowbell, we had our own drama club. And I remember we would put on plays on that little stage. And the parents would be there. And that's something that's different now. When we looked out from whatever we were doing, our parents were always there for us. Yep, the center is a very valuable and important institution in this community.
Between the influences at the Carver Center and my mother, they were not going to stop me from doing whatever it was that I wanted to do, because I was a brownie, which I hated that because I was brown. But I was a brownie. I couldn't wait to be a Girl Scout. And I was a Girl Scout. And I was the only black at my brownie and at my girl.
With the first.
And I let them know, you're going to respect me, because that's what my mother and Miss Willowbell taught us. You respect yourself, and they'll respect you.
And the dances,
Yeah.
the dances.
Talk about the dance.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you
And talk
about
about teen council too.
There's a couple, there's a lot of things about the dances that I want to forget. So, there was a lot of dark spaces down there when they turned the lights out, you know. But it was all in fun though. We never had to, you know,
They were
but
themed.
it was just fun. It was growing up, you know.
What kind of
growing up.
dances were they?
They were always theme dances.
Oh, there were theme dances.
You just didn't go in there and dance. They had the waistline dance where they measured you, and that's how much you paid to get in.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes, I was a proud 19-inch. Yeah.
But see, even though we had the dances, it was still chaperone.
Yeah.
Always chaperone. I mean, you couldn't just do, you know, it was still chaperone. I mean, they were still there. I mean, we were kids growing up, but we were always chaperone.
But, and I met my husband in Carver Center. He cleaned down there. He was Howard Frazier. He was related to Harvey Frazier. And we would go down there, because I learned how to clean the gym. You know that big buffing machine? Okay, when you turn it on, if you don't tilt it, boy, I was going across the floor.
Take you where you wanted to go.
And like you said, the gym was small.
Yeah.
The gym was small. So I ran right into that wall with that machine. And when you played ball, you know, the goal line, at the end, just about 2 or 3 feet. So when you dribbled outside the line, you had the wall. But it was so much fun. And it made me the woman I am today. I think about the Carver Center, and it just puts a smile on my face. All those good times we had down there. And your mother and Miss Wilbell, they made ladies out of us. They taught us how to be women.
Yeah.
They taught us how to be women, you know, how to act and be a woman. You know, don't be a fast or floozy, you know. They even checked our clothes to see if our skirts.
Oh, Miss Jackie.
To see if our, to see if how far up, you know, you didn't wear your skirts up above your knee.
No.
We had them below, you know, and sometimes they would even come in and measure, especially when we had the dances. If we didn't have anything on that was appropriate, you had to go home and change.
Yeah, you can change.
You had to go home and change. You didn't show all this, you didn't show all that. You know, they made you into a lady.
Cause I got my license, I got a car when I was in 1968, and I was still going to the Carver Center, cause I used to drive down there. So this is how long that the Carver Center was in my life. I went in the military when I was 18, so that was 2 years later. I was still going to the Carver Center when I was driving going to high school. In 1968, I graduated in 1970, and I was still going to the Carver Center. It was just a part of my life.
People farther east, they would come, and as everybody walked down the street, group would grow, everybody'd meet up, we'd all walk down to Carver Center together. And if when it closed, we'd all walk back home together. The Saturday morning program, you know, everybody made sure they went down for Saturday morning, because that was a big thing. You couldn't wait till Saturday to get down to Carver. Couldn't wait till Saturday, yeah. And like I said, in the snack bar and the games, and that's where you got your first kiss maybe, or call yourself having a little boyfriend or a little girlfriend. Yeah, but yeah, it was a huge part of my life.
I want to just add to what Phyllis said. And you may remember, there was a cab driver, I think his name was Monty.
Monty.
And my grandmother wouldn't let me walk. You remember Grandma Dodie?
Yes.
So Monty, I had to take a cab to the center. But Monty was so kind, he would drive slow enough so all the kids could walk beside the cab. So I wouldn't be by myself. And finally Grandma said, well, I guess I can trust all those kids to take care of you. And I can remember the first day, I didn't have to get in Monty's cab, and I could walk, you're right, walk down to Carver Center, and then we'd all walk home together. Everybody looked out for everybody.
And so there was this connection between the Carver Center directors and your mother and father. Right. You know, because they wanted you to come up to be not only good, rounded citizens, but citizens that had good characteristics in you, so that you could go ahead and pass it on to the next generation too.
It's touched more lives to me than any organization that's ever been in Galesburg.
Right.
I've been down to Carver Center all my life. I can't never remember a time other than maybe a couple of years. I graduated from high school and went to college, a junior college. I've been down to Carver Center. But then I also dealt with Carver Center because I dealt with kids with basketball. And at one time, we had like 7, 8 teams. We had like 3 girl basketball teams, we had 4 boy basketball teams, and we was really prospering, you know? And I give that to Jeannie Shelton.
Yes.
And see, nobody said anything about Jeannie. But let me tell you something, back then when we was really involved in basketball, Jeannie was right there on the side. You know, at one time when the Carver Center had these programs, these basketball programs with the girls and the boys, I mean, you're looking at 4 girl basketball team, 4 boy basketball team, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
That was like 20, 23 kids on every game, you know, and of every team. And I can remember time the kids would go home about 8:30 and they were so hungry.
Yeah.
Because the parents had to work and stuff, and most of the kids got home and didn't have nothing to eat. Well, that's where the Boys and Girls Club come in.
Yeah.
From then on, no kid left Carver Center without eating before they went home.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Not one kid that went down to Carver Center ever went home hungry. Because they had a full course meal for them before they went home.
And I think to the Carver Center's credit, they always look for ways to not let them go home hungry.
They never did no more.
So during those times, you know, not only, you know, on those Saturday morning programs,
Yeah.
where there was always a meal for those kids
Yeah.
after at the conclusion of whatever activities they did Saturday morning, and then even on those basketball days.
Well, yeah.
There was always, you know, sometimes too, I remember my mother would be cooking up stuff, you know, for sandwiches
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff, you know.
Yeah.
It was kind of that entrepreneur thing too, because you had those other people coming in, so it helped to bring money back into Carver Center, you know, to go towards, you know, the recreational things, you know. People were always thinking, you know, and so it's really key, and going back and concluding with Jeannie, you have key leadership that is going to help, that has a mind thinking forward to take the organization